the scenario forecasting planning thing is leading to a logical result that Russia has an interest in, from my viewpoint, even if it sounds totally contradictory, has a real interest in being part of a solution according to the changed gas situation, and even if it's hurting its own economy, because they will lose Europe under any circumstance, from my viewpoint, not in the short run, but later on. And so you can say, well, but they just have to hinder it. From my viewpoint, it's a big mistake, because normally I would guess, and well, for sure they will take away the reason for being pulled into a third world war in the field of Syria, and that's also a very, very important thing. And so by that they, well, maybe the interest then in Russia is against that, because they want to sell weapons to Iran, and they possibly want this war down there. And so Russia is tempted to accept a war down there, not atomic weapon using war, but a third world war or a war at all. And so it's a temptation for Putin, I guess, because they have the possibility, at least at the moment, to really raise their weapons and also to have an income to then raise their own military capabilities. And so this whole dynamic of having a build-up of strong armies can be pushed back and can be cooled down, if you like, in the forerunning of the Third World War, or in the getting hotter phase of the Third World War, which already has started and now has Russia involved in it, and which, from my viewpoint, needs to be hindered and needs to be cooled down. So if I discuss the solution of the Syria crisis in pushing for other alternatives and taking away reasons for this war by providing the alternative pipeline, even to the disadvantage, the short-term disadvantage and the long-term benefit of Russia, which is my assumption, because Russia will lose, I guess, even in a way, somehow also parts of their contracts and their relationships, parts with Egypt. But anyway, and so to solve Syria by being active part of a pipeline can also still logically involve Assad. Assad could possibly, and this is then also something which Russia now can really do, because it has a stronger word in Assad's Syria, because it is in the end the guarantee and the force which is keeping Assad in power. So Assad can, and well, the influence of the Russians has hindered that Assad has given the green light for a pipeline from Qatar to Turkey in the preface, and that's part of the deal between the Russians, I guess, and the Syrian Assad Alawite front and the Iran front at all. But anyway, so the Russians could do it in Syria, and they could do it according to Egypt. They have both the capabilities to peace deal it out. They could simply make a deal. They could allow the Qataris to have this gas pipeline, so they could give access to the market. And so the logical result out of all of it is, according to, from my viewpoint, is just a walk through the different ways. And I guess many people have already thought through these things and have come to other results, or have said, well, it's all nonsense, Russia wouldn't do it, and blah blah. But I think just to enable and to give starting points for different debate and discussion, and by that having more factors to non-being fatalistically drawn into this somehow not to be hindered Third World War scheme, which all people are discussing, and so people say, well, this is Third World War and there is no way out of it. Russia can concretely also go a way out of it by bringing Assad to accepting this pipeline. And if they don't want to do so, and people would say, well, if they would allow it and participate in Egypt, why shouldn't they participate and allow it in Syria? Well, this is all linear coming from the result, if you like. If you watch, and if you all these things only in watching and looking to the process, you would say, well, exactly, it is also a possibility, and if you're a process thinker, it's also a possibility for Russia in Syria. So Syria could be the starting point of a new gas deal, and Russia now has the leverage and has the boots on the ground, not, but the facts on the ground, the factories on the ground, by having the air support and also some boots on the ground, but anyway, maybe more boots on the ground with the Iranian help and Assad help and so on. And so they have, in a way, also boots on the ground. They have the factual leverage and the power of acting on the ground in Syria to solve and to make a gas deal. And this is a pretty positive thing. If there wouldn't be these hawkish entities, and so Russia must or could or should make a deal. And why should they wait and not really offer access to the European, Turkish and the Egypt gas market? Why should Russia not make a deal and make a painful offer, which is self-paining? And they could offer it according to Syria, and I guess maybe they are already offering it, who knows, anyway. And this, it would be very, very helpful if it would be an open source diplomatic debate and discussion. Not because I always would like to also say something to very important developments in politics, world politics or so on, not because of my personal, I would even say in a way it's idiocy that I'm always pulling myself or letting myself pulled back into this debate and into the field, because I wanted to do something totally different in the last month or even years. But anyway, so I need to get clear with my Lord later on why my content range and my focus has been shifted to strategical, diplomatical, geopolitical things, in fact of doing more content about my Lord Jesus and about the things which are more important to him. And well, the need is there, no one else is discussing much of all of it, and well, as you see, I don't discuss it very professionally. My sentence building is horrible. Please forgive and excuse the reduced cryptic sentences and my jumping from point to point and being a little bit hard to understand. But anyway, and it's really very bad, these the last videos, and the German as in the English ones. But anyway, well, from my viewpoint, it makes sense that Russia makes a gas deal. And maybe they want to do so, and they now can sit back and relax. And I think it's not the time to relax, because Russia needs, under any circumstances, accept that they will be pushed out of the European market. And this is what I would say, and this is how I see it. And it's not good for Russia, and it's not good for the world. And then you would say, how could they build the pipeline then? I say, well, or a pipeline, or how will the Qatari gas get to Europe, if your assumption is right? Through Egypt, possibly, later on, somehow. And maybe this is even part of the destabilization agenda of the hawkish Saudi things, who now are somehow a friend, but who would give a damn shit on a split and destable Egypt, as they, or might give a damn shit, or a blessed Allah, whatever, goodbye to the stable Egypt secular, somehow secular state, which is not really secular, but anyway, a mixture between nationalistic, Islamic, a secular thing there, which Sisi has been building. And so it's even scaring to think about that. The Saudis, and they really plan in these ways of thinking. And Russia needs to be very, they need to stay away from these evil plans, I guess, not to say, well, let the Saudis possibly really destabilize Egypt, and because the Saudis could hinder it all. And then if the Saudis hinder it, that's all over. I mean, if they hinder the stable thing because they might not be willingly helper of the Muslim Brotherhood, because they see them as a rival in the field of Islam and the religion, and so they possibly will not. What will the Saudis do? The Saudis are the very much interesting thing, as the Qataris are. And so Russia, will it be successful in doing something like this? And can it do a gas deal? And what is the gas deal? What possible gas deals could there be a peace helper in the Syria conflict, if you like? And this is something which people with more knowledge need to discuss. And I cannot overemphasize my request for more and better content, which I always ask for, not only because of my disability, if you like, of resulted by the ways how I do content and my laziness and resources which are limited in my case, or other factors. Anyway, but the problem is, well, what is the next problem, or what is this all leading? What is this all leading to? Excuse my stumbling. For the Russians and for the Saudis. Well, the Saudis, they could build this pipeline. They could really do so. Why wouldn't they do so? And now I lost again my how would you say in Germany, if you have something which also my pullover is made of, you can, so this thing, the small thing out of Baumwolle, as we say in Germany, out of polyester or whatever, which is making my pullover a pullover then. This is what I lost now. Well, anyway, So also my disability may be a starting point for you to do more and better content if you watch this video here, and if you understood anything about from what I tried to make clear in my bad English and in my reduced sentence building disability, if you like. So the Saudis. Again, the Saudis, always the Saudis, and the Russians. Now they are back in the power of acting, and they have some leverage by their presence down there. They can hinder the pipeline in Syria. And would the Saudis not logically go to Egypt and build this pipeline and finish it instead of the Russians? And if the Saudis would do so, why shouldn't they do so? If they want to get rid of Russia and if they are seeing Russia as an enemy. And if the Saudis do so, shouldn't the Russians be the first, so that they are part of it? And is it not logical that the Saudis will try to build and to help the Qataris to have this pipeline and also solve the Muslim Brotherhood Egypt military conflict? Or will it much likelier be the case that the Saudis say, well, this conflict doesn't even have to be solved to bring the Qataris, and so these things are already in planning to bring the Qataris to a deal with Egypt. Egypt can still have attention, and because of their history and their support of the Muslim Brotherhood, and so there is no hindrance at all. And so the Saudis already planned it, and so the Russians are out again. Also, as in Greece, as in Europe, as in Turkey, now in Egypt, in a way, or how is General Sisi, and how much energy is needed, and how cheap is the Russian atomic energy? And well, Egypt can simply use all energy resources if they like, and maybe it's even. And so, from that viewpoint, if my assumption is right, well, the Russians need to be part of the solution, and they need to solve it. And they need to solve it in an asymmetric way. And from my viewpoint, how can there be another way if you don't invest, if you don't have joint ventures, if you don't offer the Qataris and the Saudis anything they want, or something they really want. And so you have to accept some negative things then in the end. And if Russia is calculating, if with a destable Egypt, that this pipeline will not be built, and so they raise the military of Egypt, they sell atomic energy, and they have some other way of hindering Qatar or this pipeline being built. And then, well, the thing I didn't discuss is this pipeline even possible? And what are the other hindrances then to build it at all? So do more and better content to this thing. And, well, hopefully this all will lead to peace in Syria, because a pipeline which is built, and even if the Saudis do it, would in the end help to peace deal or cool down the Syria thing, because then the hawks wouldn't need Syria, or a split of Syria, or a divided Syria, or a Sunnistan as a part of a new map on the Middle East ground, splitting it all up, and then have a Sunnistan part where the pipeline can be built. And so, just a brain walk challenge for myself, which I finish now with this video, to diversify content range and the discussion and the debate, to have more real belief and trust that there can also be a peace time endurance moment, and so that there is no fatalism to go to war against Iran, excuse my stumbling, and there is no fatalism to really have this Syria war in the near future. And it would give also more strength to the Saudi hegemonical position if Qatar would be strengthened. And so it is possible.